Hey guys, it's Joe Stanley. I'm making this video for the people who are a little nervous about going into towered airports. See, mostly student pilots are afraid to do this, but there's a lot of private pilots out there too that just avoid towered airports like the plague. They just are uncomfortable with it. They're not used to talking on the radio at a controlled towered airport. But I'm here to basically show you how easy it really is. You know most of the stuff you need to know already when you go into a towered airport. The things you know already that you really don't have to learn are traffic patterns for one. I mean, you know what a traffic pattern is. You know what downwind is in base and final. You should be able to visualize that by now. You know, by the time you're going to a towered airport, you've already learned all that stuff. Distance and direction is another thing. You know, how far away are you from an airport, for example? What direction are you coming from? You need to know this basic knowledge, and you know that already. The other thing is how to identify a controlled towered airport. Well, you should know that. If you know that and you just know those couple of things, you know how to identify airports have a control tower and the traffic patterns, stuff like that, and distance and direction, you should easily be able to go to a towered airport because the rest of it is just like a conversation with somebody. You're just talking. It's just talking. People are so worried that they're going to say the wrong thing or they're not going to understand the control tower, you know, what they're saying, and it's just conversation about stuff you already know. All right, so let's talk about a couple of things. When you go into an airport, you need to know three things. You need to remember three things, and the three things that you have to remember, and the order I would want you to remember it in, is who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. Okay, so when you go into an airport, who you are is going to relate to the type of airplane you're flying and the tail number. People identify you by your tail number when you're flying, when you're talking to a control tower or you're talking to somebody else at an uncontrolled field. All right, so your tail number, let's give this example today. We're flying, we'll say Warrior 12345. Okay, so who you are is Warrior 12345. Well, where are you? This is where the distance and the direction comes in. All right, so you need to know your distance from your airport that you're calling and the direction you're coming from. So let's say, for example, you are 10 miles to the west. Okay, so now you're 10 west. Now you want to abbreviate your calls and make them a little shorter. So don't say I am 10 miles to the west of the airport or something like that. Just come out and say 10 west. Okay, and then the what you want to do is just announcing what you're going to do. For example, if you're going into a control towered airport, you would just say you're inbound landing runway 26 or whatever runway it happens to be. All right, so remember those three things for now. We're going to go to a towered airport. Let's assume that we're leaving Dixon Airport, which is right over here. Okay, we're going to go a little bit to the northeast and we're going to go all the way over to here to DuPage Airport. All right, so this is DuPage Airport here. On DuPage Airport, before we go there, obviously we're going to want to listen to the weather that's going on over there. So looking closely at DuPage, here's all the information right here. We can see that the ATIS information is 132.075. We're going to listen to that information before we go to the airport. And in that information, not only are we going to get the weather and the wind and all that stuff, but we're going to know what runway to expect. And they usually suggest the runways that are most aligned with the wind. So even if they didn't suggest a runway, if you have an airport diagram and you have all the runways in front of you and you have the wind direction, so you can expect you're going to get a runway that's going to be aligned with the wind. It's not always the case, but you can always request one too. So we're going into the airport. We want to anticipate what's going to happen, and we can do that by listening to the ATIS and get the weather and get whatever runways they're using, or figure out which runways are most aligned with the wind that's there at the time, and that way we can have an idea of what's going to happen. All right, so now we already got a heads up of what's going to happen. We've got our weather. We're flying from Dixon to DuPage. When we get about 10 miles out, it's suggested that you make your first call. So what's your call? That's exactly what we talked about before, the who you are, the where you are, and what you're going to do. Every call you make when you're going to a controlled towered airport, uncontrolled towered airport, you're going to approach control airport, you know, when you're contacting them initially, you're going to tell them all that information, the who you are, the where you are, and what you want to do. All right. So we make our radio call to DuPage. But the only difference is we're going to add that we have information, the information that we just listened to, the information from ATIS. And that's going to be, whatever the name of the ATIS happens to be, information Bravo or Juliet or Echo or whatever it happens to be, you're going to repeat that back at the end. So, the who you are, where you are, what you want to do is DuPage Tower, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 West, inbound landing with Zulu. Now, notice I told them who I was, where I was, and what I wanted to do, and I had the information in there. If you don't throw in the information and you forget, they might just ask you if you have the information, or they'll say advise when you have information, echo, or whatever it happens to be. But you just told them those three things. Now, I didn't tell them the runway. I just said I was inbound landing, because they ultimately are going to be the ones that decide which runway I land on. Okay? So from here, you just listen. Just listen for your tail number. The only thing you have to worry about is repeating back instructions. Okay? If there's an instruction, you're going to repeat it back. They're going to come back to you on the radio, and they're going to say, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plan straight in for runway 10, report 3 west. Okay, so what do they say? Well, we already know what they're going to tell us to land. They're going to tell us to set up on a runway. We're going there to land, so all they're going to do is tell you what runway to set up on. And it's always going to be the shortest distance from the direction you're coming from. If the wind's aligned with 10, they're going to have you land straight in 10. If it's aligned with 3-3, they might say, enter a left base for 3-3 or something, depending on the angle you're coming in at. You enter from the shortest distance. So you're not going to do a 45-degree entry. You're not going to make any radio calls in the pattern. You're just listening for instruction. That's what's so easy about a control tower at airport. You listen for instructions, and you repeat back those instructions, and you do what you're told. So you're coming into the airport, and we're inbound to the runway, and they've told us to report 3 miles west. And the reason they're doing that is because most Class D airports don't have radar. So we're going into the airport, and when they say report 3 miles west, it's because they need to know where you're at. They're helping all the traffic going to the airport, all right? And if they can't see you because you're too far away, it's going to be kind of hard for them to fit you guys all in at the same time if you got multiple planes coming in there. So they ask you for a position report. That's it. So they said, plan straight in 10, report 3 west. It's simple. You're inbound, and you just repeat back the instruction. Remember what I told you, repeat back all instructions. And when you do, end in your tail number so they know who's talking. Because there might be 10 different people talking, and sometimes the wrong people answer by accident. So just, listen for your tail number all the time, and repeat back your tail number. So your call would be DuPage Tower, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, reporting 3 west. Okay? Simple, short, to the point. Now, from there, they're either going to clear you to land or they're not. So you're going to the airport to land. They already told you which runway to expect. You've already reported. All you're doing is waiting for a clearance to land. Now, if they give you additional instructions, those additional instructions could be, various different things. But really, it's nothing that you don't know. They might tell you to extend your downwind. They might tell you they will call your base. They'll say, I'll call your base. Well, what's that mean? Well, you know what base is, and you know what I'll call means, right? I'll make the call. I'll tell you when to do it. So if I'll call your base means, they usually do that because someone else is coming in on final and they don't want you turning in front of them. So just listen and understand what they're saying. It's really not a big deal. When you come in, they might clear you to land right away. They might not clear you to land right away. And they might tell you to follow somebody. You might have traffic on a 3-mile final, and they might say, you're number 2 following a Bonanza on a 3-mile final. Well, what do you say? Well, that's an instruction, right? You're number 2 following a Bonanza on a 3-mile final. So you repeat it back. Number 2 following a Bonanza on a 3-mile final. You don't even have to say on a 3-mile final. Just say number 2 following the Bonanza. That's your instruction. The other one was just information about where he is. Okay? So number 2 following the Bonanza. Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Repeat back your tail number. Now he knows you acknowledged the call and it wasn't somebody else that accidentally acknowledged the call. All right. Sometimes they'll make you do a right 360 on the downwind for spacing. What the heck is that? Well, what is a right 360? A right 360. It's a 360-degree turn to the right. You know, that's enough to give you spacing, and there's going to be some terms you don't understand. I'm sure one of these days in your flying career, they're going to say something you don't understand. Just ask them. You know, if you're on the phone with your friend and he says something to you and you don't understand what he said, you're going to say, "What are you talking about?" or "What's that mean?" or whatever, and he's going to re-clarify it. And the control towers will do the same thing. If they say something and you didn't hear it, don't freak out in the airplane and look at your instructor and go, "Oh God, what did he say?" Just ask him to repeat. Say, "Can you say again, please, for Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?" And that's it. So he'll repeat it back. It's not a big deal. All right. Now you're going into the airport, so you might say, "Oh, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're clear to land runway 10," and you just repeat back. You're clear to land runway 10. Okay, clear to land runway 10. Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if he doesn't tell you you're clear to land and you're on final and he hasn't cleared you to land yet, ask him if you're clear to land, because you can't touch down. You got to remember, at a towered airport, they give you instructions to do everything. They control everything. You can't do anything without them giving you permission, all right? So, if they've cleared you to land, then you just repeat back, "You're clear to land." If they tell you you're number 2 on final, or following number 2 following a bonanza, you say number 2 following a bonanza. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't turn base when you want to, unless the control tower said, "I'll call your base." But you have to know where that plane is before you go turning base, so you don't turn in front of them. Okay? You continue on, and if you don't see that plane and you think, "Okay, well, he should be on final, I don't see him," but you're afraid to turn because you haven't seen him yet, ask the control tower. He's there to help you. "DuPage Tower, can Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 make our base turn yet?" Or, "I don't have the traffic in sight." Or just talk with him and tell him what's going on, and he'll help you out there. All right. So let's say we've been cleared to land. Okay. Where do we go from there? Okay. So we're going to look at the airport diagram here. And you can see, if we were coming from the west over here, we'd be running straight in for runway 10. Now, I like to pull this, and these are situated north, south, east, west too. So if you read it, north is going to be up here, west is going to be over here, east over here, and south down here. All right. So where do we get off? This is real easy too. Think about this for a second and look at the diagram as you're coming down. Where are you going to go ultimately? If you're going to the ramp down here, then a logical exit would be off to the right, because that's the direction you want to go ultimately. Which one of the taxiways do you get off of? Do you get off here? Do you get off here? It's first available unless you're told otherwise, okay? So always go to the first available taxiway and clear the runway. So what is clear the runway? A lot of people get this all messed up too. So let's look at that. All right. So here's some runway signs and markings here. Now, I'm not going to run through all of these, but I want you to remember real simple things, couple simple things, okay? All the red signs on the left, okay, are basically stop signs, just like your regular street sign. That's street stop sign. It's red and white, right? If you see red, you got to stop. Both these are runway signs, and it tells you this is runway 4 and 2-2. 4 is on one end, 2-2 is on the other. All right. Well, right next to one of these stop signs, you're always going to have a hold short line. Okay. These are your hold short lines. This is the where you are going to stop, and you know, before you enter the runway, or clear after you exit the runway. So let's look at this for a second. You notice how it's got a double dashed line and a double solid line. Think of that the same way you do when you're driving your car, when you have a passing zone and a no passing zone. If the double broken line is on your side, closer to you, you are allowed to pass through it. If the solid line is closer to you, you cannot pass through it. So as you're approaching a runway and you see that runway 4 and 2-2 sign up there, and you're coming up to it, you know it's a stop sign. Just like on a stop sign, there's going to be a hold short line right next to it. Okay? When you come up to that sign, what you're going to see is a double yellow line on your side. So you'd be coming from up here, and you'd be coming this way, getting onto the runway. When you exit the runway, if you were on the runway and you're exiting, you would see the broken side on your side. So we know when we get off on the first available taxiway, we need to clear the runway as soon as possible. So we're going to see these double lines here, and we're going to cross over them, and we're going to stop our airplane right here immediately on the other side of the lines. Okay, that's where you stop. That's your hold short line. You're clear of the runway at that point. Okay, so just for general instruction on the airport signs, just so you have an idea of what's going on, there's numbers and letters basically is what, you know, for the runway and the taxiway sign. You're either on the taxiway or the runway, or you're not. Okay, the red signs stopping you at the runway. This is the runway. Here you are. Stop right now. Okay, the letters have arrows next to them, meaning if you want to go to taxiway Juliet, for example, you have to go to the right. So they're just direction. If there's an arrow, it's directions. All right. If you see this, for example, that means just that's the taxiway you're on. If you see this, you're on that runway. Okay. Runway numbers. Runways are always in numbers, and taxiways are always in letters. Okay. So where are you? Well, I'm on runway 22 in this example. Where are you? I'm on taxiway Bravo in this example. Where's runway 22? It's this direction. Where's taxiway Juliet? It's to the right. What's this mean? Well, it means you're on Golf. Alpha is to your left and behind you, and Lima is to the right. All right. What's this? Well, we're at the runway. Here you are, getting ready to get on it. Okay. Hold short because there's a big red sign here. So it's a piece of cake. All right. So anytime you see those runway signs, know that there's going to be a hold short line next to it. If you're coming from this side, you stop before the double line. If you're coming from this side, you pass through it and stop immediately on the other side. Okay? So just think passing zone and no passing zone. Okay, so now we go to the tower again, the tower at airport operations. Let's assume we've landed and we've cleared and we're on the first taxiway, and we're sitting right here, right where the W is. Okay, we're on taxiway Whiskey. All right, now what do we do from there? Well, let's say we're spending a night and we're going to go park over here on the ramp. Okay, well, you do the same call now, except now we have ground control we have to talk to. Now, tower's usually going to hand you off to ground once you clear the runway. You got to understand, tower can control you on the ground. They can control you in the air. Ground control only controls you on the ground. Okay, so if you've cleared the runway and you're sitting on taxiway Whiskey over here, and tower hasn't handed you off the ground, just remind them you're holding off Whiskey. You know, DuPage Tower, you know, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, holding off a runway 10 at intersection Whiskey. Okay, and they'll tell you contact ground, or they'll just give you permission to, or give you directions to taxi to the ramp. Now, you need an airport diagram with you so you know which way to go. You know, this right here is a perfect map. You can see nice and detailed, and they might tell you to go straight ahead on Whiskey, you know, turn right on Romeo 8, for example. And you just say straight ahead on Whiskey, right on Romeo 8, and you go into the ramp. If there's a runway you have to cross, say you're parked over here and you're going to go to runway 28, for example. You're on Whiskey, they might tell you left on Golf, taxi to 28, hold short of 20 right. Notice 20 right, the runway here crosses the taxiway here. So you're required to hold short of all runways, and when you come up to that runway, you're going to see that red sign just like we talked about in those double lines too. All right. So when you get up to that line, you're going to stop and you're going to hold short, and you're repeating back all these instructions. You know, left on Golf, taxi to runway 28, hold short 20 right. And it's good if you have a paper and a pen, so that way you can write down these instructions and make sure you do it the right way and look at the map while you're going. Okay, so let's say we're on the ramp now anyway, and we're over here and we're parked there, and we went overnight, and the next day we go out there, we do our pre-flight inspection, we're ready to go. Who do we contact? What do we say? It's the same exact thing you did when you went into the airport. The difference is you're on the ground now, right? So ground control controls you on the ground. So you're going to do the same thing by listening to the ATIS. You're going to get the winds, what expected runways there are, stuff like that. So now automatically you know where the runways are that you're going to be using. You can look at your airport diagram and you can visualize whether you're going to go Romeo 8 to the right or to the left, depending on which runways the wind is favoring. You're going to think about that all ahead of time. Then you're going to contact ground control. And what are you going to say? The same three things that we talked about before. Who you are, where you are, what you want to do. Now it's DuPage ground, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the FBO or on the ramp or wherever you happen to be, and like to taxi for departure to the north or to the west or whatever direction you want to go to. And it's a good idea to throw the information in there too, so let's throw that in there. We're on the ramp with information Echo would like to taxi for departure to the west. So now they know you got the information. If you didn't tell them, then they would remind you to advise when you have information, whatever. Okay, so you tell them that, and now what are they going to do? Well, what do you think they're going to do? They're not going to give you any permission to do anything but taxi somewhere, right? Ground control is not going to give you any weird things that you don't know. You ask them permission to go somewhere, and they're going to give you that permission to go somewhere, and they're going to tell you how to get there. So you write down all your instructions. They might say we're departing runway 10 again. Straight out on Romeo 8, left on Whiskey, left on Golf, taxi to 10. Okay? Well, now you read back those instructions, and you're going down here, and you're turning this way, and you're going this way. Now, keep in mind, if there's multiple taxiways going to the runway, you always want to go to the beginning of the runway. When you're cleared to taxi to a runway, it's the very beginning of the runway. All right? If they give you an intersection departure, then you go to the intersection. So say we were going to 28, for example, and you're over here, and they said right end Whiskey, right end Golf, cross 20 right, taxi to 28 at Charlie. Well, here's Charlie. Here's runway 28. He doesn't expect you to go all the way to the end. He expects you to take off from intersection Charlie. Okay? So listen to the instructions and do what he says and just repeat back the instructions. So nothing's complicated so far. Ground control is just going to tell you how to taxi around and get to the runways you're going to. You got an airport diagram with all the letters on there so you can see which way to turn, how to do that. You can write down a piece of paper whether you're going to turn left or right or whatever. Tower's either going to clear you to land or they're not. They're going to tell you which runways to land on. They'll tell you if you're following somebody or, any special instructions, and all you're doing is repeating it back. Okay, so that's it. Now when you're going back to when you're going back out of the airport, you've got to understand that your ring is right here. Okay, this is where their airspace ring ends. Okay, if you're leaving the airport, you have to stay on their radio frequency inside that whole circle there, okay? Until you're outside the circle, you can't change frequencies unless you ask them for permission. And if you want to ask them for permission, say you're going from DuPage to Aurora here, I don't have very much time to contact Aurora if I stay on their frequency all the way till I exit. So when I'm talking to DuPage, I would tell DuPage that I would like to change frequencies or request frequency change. DuPage Tower, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, request frequency change. And they'll give you permission or they won't. The other thing to keep in mind is when we are at the Tower Airport, I forgot to mention, when we get to the end of the runway, say we're coming down here and we go down to the end of the runway and we get over here and we stop and we do our run up and we get all ready to go, who do we talk to? Who controls your flying? It's the tower, right? You've already went as far as you can go with ground control. You can't go any further than that, so you're going to switch over to the to tower frequency at that point, and just do that automatically. Now, the reason I told you should probably wait, and not everybody does, and it's not a big deal, but you should, when you're landing on the runway in the first place and you're holding off the runway, I usually like to let the tower hand me off the ground, only because tower can control me on the ground or in the air. And sometimes they just control me on the ground. Sometimes they never hand me off the ground and they just say, stay with me on this frequency, and I just stay with them. So I like to, knowing that they can control me on the ground too, I like to let them hand me off. But the other way, contact tower once you're there, get your permission to take off. And what are you going to say when you want to take off? DuPage Tower, who you are, where you are, what you're going to do. Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. ready to depart. That's where you're at, right? You're ready. You're sitting there ready at the end of the runway, ready to depart. 10, and what are you going to do? Northbound or westbound, whatever direction you want to go. That's what you're going to say. We're abbreviating it. We're not going to say, well, I want to depart this way, then I want to turn left, and I want to go to 3,000 feet. You know, just keep it abbreviated and to the point. DuPage Tower, Warrior 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ready to depart 10 to the west. That's it. Get your permission, go. Now they might tell you to make left traffic or right traffic, or your left turnout approved or right turnout approved. But whatever their direction or whatever their instructions are, you follow it. That's it. There's not much to it. It's a piece of cake. If you want more detailed information, I have stuff on my website here. This is flightinstructorjoe.com, and got many e-lessons that I got here with more detailed explanations. But I got lots of free articles and posts here about many different things that will really help you about, you know, carburetor icing, collision avoidance, ground reference maneuvers, VORs, all sorts of stuff. Good information in here that I think you would enjoy, so check it out if you get a chance at flightinstructorjoe.com. And you know, check out some of our more detailed e-lessons that we have, and if you like them, then you know, let us know, give us a comment. So I hope this helps, and if you have any questions, come over to the site, give me a comment, send me an email, and I'll try to respond. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.